Getting started with Xeol and Jenkins. You may be using tools in your Jenkins pipeline to check for security issues in your code. However, these tools don't necessarily cover everything that you need to know about what's going on with your code. One of these items might be end of life of libraries and operating systems that you're using for your application. Here's today's starting point. I have a Jenkins LTS controller version 2.401.2. Attached to this controller, I have an agent that has the Xeol CLI installed on it. Now let's go take a look at the documentation for Xeol. The link for this documentation is down in the description. And what we can see here is Xeol is an end-of-life package scanner for container images and file systems. So let's go ahead and go back over to our controller. I've set up a job for Xeol. If we take a look at the configuration, the only thing I've done so far is just run a Xeol version. If we take a look at the output of job run 1, what we'll see is the output for the version is currently 0.4.1. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and scan a container image for an older version of Jenkins LTS. Let's see what happens when we scan that image. Let's modify our job. We'll click on Configure. I'm going to add a new stage, and the stage is going to be called Scan. And the command I'm going to run is Xeol and the name of the image. Now I'm picking a very old image, at least at the time of recording, which is 2.190.1-slim. Let's go ahead and click on Save and click on Build Now. We'll see that build number 2 starts up. And currently we're downloading that image and scanning that image for any end-of-life information. We can see here that the job completed, and it did find an end-of-life information about specifically the name of the operating system that is packaged within that container image. In this case, it was Debian 10, and its end-of-life date was September 10th of 2022. Now, at the time of recording, that was 311 days ago. Now, where does this data come from? If we were to go back over to the documentation for Xeol, and if we go down into the section about what is EOL software, in the second paragraph, they state that the data for Xeol is sourced from endoflife.date. So when that data is pulled from endoflife.date, it's turned into a database to be used within Xeol. So in our case, when it was scanning the image, it found Debian 10, it did a lookup against the data that came from the website. It saw that Debian 10 was end-of-lifed September 10th, 2022, and then did some math to give me the number of days since EOL. Now, if we were to take a look back at the stage view, we can see for build number 2 that the job completed successfully. But what if I wanted the job to fail if it found any kind of end-of-life information? Well, fortunately, Xeol gives us the option for gating anytime there's an end-of-life package found. So all we have to do is we just need to pass in fail on EOL found. So if we go back over into our job, click on Configure, and let's modify our Xeol line to include fail on EOL found, click on Save, and click on Build Now. If we take a look at the output for number 3, we see we've added in that extra option. Again, we still see our Debian 10, but now we have another couple of lines underneath that. We have one error occurred, and it discovered EOL packages. You'll also notice that we have the error line at the bottom, script returned an exit code of 1. So now if we go back over to our stage view, we can see that build number 3 is now failed. So this is interesting. We're looking at an old version of Jenkins LTS, and we sort of expected things to be out of date. But now let's take a look at the current version of Jenkins LTS. Now we expect, if we were to take a look at Jenkins LTS, we're running 2.401.2. What's going to happen when we run the scan against that? We expect everything to be within date because the operating system and everything else that's used for the container image is considered up to date as produced by the Jenkins build team. But what if I wanted to try to predict when this image is going to become end of life? Well, fortunately, Xeol gives us one more option that we can use, and that's called Look Ahead. By default, when you run Xeol, it's looking ahead 30 days to see if there are any items within the container image that are going to be expiring. But with Look Ahead, I can actually specify any kind of duration that I want. So let's go ahead and modify our job. So we'll go back into Xeol, click on Configure, and we're going to replace the container image of 2.190 with 2.401.2. We're going to leave in our fail on EOL found, but we're going to specify a look ahead of 5 years. Now that may seem extreme, but I'm just trying to figure out at what point in the future would this image potentially have any kind of end-of-life information in it. So let's go ahead and click on Save and click on Build Now. As we take a look at the output for number 4, we see our new image from what we've been running before. We still have our fail on EOL found, and we've specified a look ahead of 5 years. Now that it's completed, we can see that we received 2 end-of-life messages. Number 1, Debian 11 is scheduled to go end of life on July 1st of 2024. Also, Java 11.019 is scheduled to go end of life September 30th of 2026. We can see that we have the OS for Debian, and also we have a binary for Java. Now note that the days EOL is blank. That's because those days are in the future. So we're not days in the past, just days in the future. But since we did find packages that do have end of life, even though they're out in the future, the job still fails. If we take a look at the stage view, we can still see that job number 4 has failed. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.